Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Carmela. We're here again with Carmela's Rasslin Radio Relived. I'm here with my buddy Jeannie. How you doing, honey?
Hi, Carm. Good. How are
Hi.
you?
Good. And we are in episode 7. We have a very special guest today. Oh, I'm so excited. I spoke to him
Oh.
yesterday for about maybe a half an hour while he was on his way to the Meadowlands for another wrestling match. So we have with us today a long, long time friend, a great wrestler, done a lot of years with different promotions. I'm just going to let him start talking. Tom Brandi.
Thanks
Woo!
for having me. Thank you.
All right. So let's
Thank
just
you.
start with what are you doing right now at this moment in your life? Are you still wrestling? How did it go yesterday?
I'm doing a podcast right now. After the podcast, I'll probably be ready for a nap.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to exert so much energy. I'll be ready for a nap. Last night we were in the Meadowlands, and I just you remember Crowbar, obviously.
Yeah.
So Crowbar and Tommy Fierro were co-promoters, and I talked to both of them this morning, and I just said, this is the reason, like shows like last night are the reason I'm still doing this after 38 years. I said, because there's a whole lot of bad ones. Yeah. And they're the ones I walk away from like saying, why am I still doing this? So I talked to those guys. I said, thank God there's still good ones out there, because you feel like I told you yesterday, like I still look forward to it. And I'm glad, because like the worst thing I could imagine is if I knew I had to wrestle and I had to like twist my arm to get in the car and do it.
Right.
Then you say to yourself, like, you just can't do it if you're forcing yourself going in there and trying to like put a match together and take the bumps and do the travel and everything else that goes with it. If you didn't, and that's, again, I couldn't predict that 38 years ago, obviously, but I'm just so glad that that's the way it is now. So like, I'll probably do like in the busier months, like now, I'm probably averaging about 4 a month, which is fine. And then you have the slower months where you're like bouncing off the walls, but you expect it. Right. So yeah, I'm just glad that like a show like last night keeps you going and keeps the love alive and keeps it fresh. And just like I feel the same way now as I did 38 years ago.
God bless you. That's great. Now, do you still work out the same way you did all those years?
Well, you know how you tone it down. I mean, you have to deal with age and aches and pains. So yeah, I mean, I'll still go to the gym like 4 days a week. But I mean, you learned a lot more. I mean, you learn more about working a match. You learn a lot more about like, what do I really need to do in the gym, not doing the gym. Believe me, you're not doing anything to hurt yourself.
Right.
You're doing stuff. It's more mind over matter, where it's like, you know what? If I know I went to the gym that day and I was there for an hour, whatever, I know I went.
Right.
I'm not getting any bigger. I'm not changing my physique. It's just, you went, you try and keep a decent physique and go from there. That's the part you can't control. You know what I mean? Like it's age, genetics, metabolism. That's all stuff you can't control.
Right.
So that's all. True. You play with the card you're dealt.
That's true. Well, I wanted to tell you too, we talked yesterday about how dedicated you are to New Jersey. Right now, like we're from New Jersey. You know, I'm from Philadelphia. Jeannie's from Philadelphia, and you said you like to stay within a 2-hour radius of going to different shows. But I think it's wonderful for the people who are going to listen to this to know that you like to stay in the area of where you're from and you have a dedication to that area.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, believe me, it's all because it's not for the right reasons. Don't get me wrong. It's all for it's right and wrong reasons. Like the difference is, and COVID changed a lot of things, and COVID made you open your eyes to a lot of things. Sitting at home for about 8 months with nothing to do, no shows or anything. It's like before the mindset when you're brought into the business all those years ago. You get a call, you go. Like if they're going to pay your fee, you go. Now, don't get me wrong, like not 10 hours or 12 hours, but, unless there's like 2 or 3 shows in a weekend or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's like, I'm just not like, certain promoters in certain areas. And I'm not going to drive like 6 hours for 50 people because the type of show the guy draws.
Yeah.
It's different if it's, you're going to be 1,000 people there because it's a big fair or it's like a show that has a lot of names on it. And it's going to do well.
Yeah.
So now it's almost like you don't get enough dates where you're picking and choosing, but sometimes now I do because it's like you hear from that one promoter and you're professional about it. And you're like, I'll never screw anybody last minute or like bail it on a guy last minute. Nothing like that. Just tell them up front, sorry, I can't make it. I'm booked. Something like that.
Right.
It's not a lot. It's not a lot, but the Jersey shows, and there's not really as many Pennsylvania promoters anymore right now, at least. I've seen so many guys come and go over 38 years.
Yeah.
And now it's almost like, you can pick and choose, but again, you'll pick the closer ones because just for that reason. That's the main reason.
Okay, so tell us,
like some of the ones Jeannie goes to.
Yeah, I was telling him, Jeannie, about where you went last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like some of the ones Jeannie supports, like these smaller, the one small promote. Well, Jeannie, the Gloucester City.
Yes,
they run.
That's where I was last night. Yeah,
3 promotions run in one building.
Right.
And the guy said to me, I mean, he literally, Carmela, literally is getting 30 people.
Wow.
Literally. And as a promoter, that's like you're like, I'm putting a knife in your side right now because you're like you're reliving bad memories. Not that you ever had that, but bills and expenses when you're a promoter. So the guy gets in my ear after the show and he's like messaging me. We're going back and forth. And he's like, well, what do I have to do? I said, well, the first thing, cardinal sin number 1, get the hell out of that building.
Yeah.
I says, cardinal rule number 1 in wrestling, you never share a building with another promotion. So you have all these promotions that are like, oh, well, we have our fans. We're going to do better than the other guys. It's just watering it down. There's no other way to put it.
Right.
One building that's not that great to start with, that like one guy kind of runs it. So he books the other companies in and out of there. So like he makes all the rules. He tells you what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, that's not good.
The guy's drawing 30 people. And I don't want to be there. Like, I get the booking. I'm like, I don't want to be there. I want to be part of that.
Yeah. Well, I guess it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, obviously, because I know I was a promoter, of course, and it does it. And not only is it sad to see that you don't get a lot of people, but as you said, it does hurt the pocketbook, which is part of the reason I got out of it originally, because number 1, I had a daughter, but number 2, we were losing our shirt and it was ridiculous. I mean, I love doing it, but sometimes your passion isn't worth the money. It's sad, but it's true,
Yeah. And I told the guy, I said, if there's a few rules that you in other words, the promoting part of it is obviously the hardest thing. I said, but dude, I said, you got to look at the common sense part first.
Right.
I said, find your own building, get the hell out of here. First of all, second of all, like, there's no secondary way promotion. And like I said to you yesterday, you're lucky you weren't around with the social media days. Because now everybody's lazy. All it is like, oh, let me post on Facebook 60 times a day. Same people see it.
Yeah.
Like Facebook offers paid advertising. That's different. These people aren't doing that. They're just doing their private page, and they're putting that poster on 1,000 times over and over, and they wonder why only 60 people show up. But
you get out of it what you put into it.
Exactly. But they think they're putting work in. That's the problem. They think they're doing the work.
Exactly.
Just the idea of seeing a poster in Gloucester City. The fans don't know the difference. They're just seeing like a random poster with a bunch of faces they don't recognize. And there's a date and a time. And then there's a poster next to it for a show. In that building, they literally run a Saturday afternoon, a Saturday night, and a Sunday afternoon. And they wonder why they're all terrible. And I told the guy, I said, you know what? You might get one. It's like the one Jeannie goes to. Maybe they have more of a following of family and friends, or they get like a little bit of a fan base. But they're all up against it. No matter what they do, they're all up against it.
Yeah.
I see the pictures, and none of the pictures look good.
But it's even harder today. But let's go back a little bit and tell us how you got started in the business. Because when you called me yesterday and started doing that accent like you were Dominic, man, it brought back so many memories. I wanted to cry.
Well, so I'll get into that. I have to ask you, because after I hung up with you yesterday, the whole rest of the way I'm thinking, I remember everything we did, but what was the exact day we met? Like, what do you remember? Like how we met? Like the first time.
We met, if I'm not mistaken, and this is what I remember, through Dominic. That's the only way I met you that I know of, because we were all, I used to go to the matches, like I said, ever since I was 6 years old. But the problem is to pinpoint it 100%, I don't know that I can do that. But I remember seeing you and Dominic talking about you. And I thought you were really cute,
No, see,
and
I think it was the other way around. I think you sold us to Dominic to be on that show where he ran the Chamonix High School. And there's certain things you never forget. So
wait a minute.
I was probably 19 and probably a year in the business and met you guys. And you said, we're working on doing this show in the Chamonix High School.
Oh my God, you're right.
And it was the first time I ever worked heel. I wrestled Mr. Heyday. Remember Mr. Heyday?
Yes.
So at the time, I'm working in a bar, bouncing. We have all these friends. You're in that life where you're like a million friends. So like I'm selling tickets. So Dominic was, this is one of the stories I tell all the time. Dominic, again, I didn't know Dominic. I met him more through you guys.
Okay,
so Dominic,
right.
I had to sell 50 tickets. Now, in the Chamonix High School is probably 45 minutes from where I lived.
That's so funny. I'm not meaning to interrupt you, but Dominic, you're right. Dominic used to make all the wrestlers sell tickets.
But here's the thing, though. Here's even more so. He didn't know me. So, like, you're selling me to him, and he don't know me. So he's like, yeah, I'll put him on the show. He's got to sell 50 tickets. So I'm selling to all the people, like family and friends, but a lot of people from the bar went because I remember going back to the bar after the show, and we had, spent the night there. So 50 tickets, I got to 43. I was done. I couldn't sell one more ticket. Because remember, no social media, no cell phones, no texting, no nothing.
Yep. No,
nowhere I could blow up the, put it on my Facebook and say, hey guys, my first, somewhat local show. Everybody's got to come. It's my first somewhat local drivable show.
Right.
I got the 43 tickets. It was right before the show. I had to buy the other 7. I had to buy the other 7 tickets. And just to hand him 50 tickets. Right. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was he puts me with Mr. Heyday, who's the shits. Drizzling shits. I was the heel. He was the baby face.
God.
I have almost 50 people there because I actually did have more people just showed up at the show.
Yeah.
But I couldn't sell them the tickets ahead of time. So I would have said, just say for argument's sake, I had 50 people there. I'm in one of my worst matches ever. And I was new to the business. So, I only knew so much. And I'm like, I'm stuck with this sorry piece of shit. And in front of all my family and friends. And I'm just trying to look. And the first time I ever worked heel too.
Oh
so I'm not even secure because it's like I'm always wrestling babyface. First time I worked heel. How do you forget that night? How do you forget that? I remember like it was yesterday. I remember.
You know what?
I remember some of the moves we did in the match.
But everything you're telling me now, everything you're telling me brings it back because Dominic was horrible sometimes to the wrestlers, to the boys.
But you know what? He didn't. But you know what? I can't be mad at him because here's a guy been in the business for 40 years. I'm in the business for 6 months to a year. He doesn't know me. He didn't really know Kalua either until we got to know him. No, you know what I mean? And then you got to be, then after that show, that opened the door because Mick wasn't in it yet. So Shane was pretty much around our time. Right. And he booked us on the trip to Italy for his nephew where we stayed, that whole Italy trip that we went to for Dominic.
Wow.
That the check bounced, but that's besides the point. I still have that check in this house somewhere. $600 rubber check somewhere in this house.
Oh my God, that's crazy. But you got to admit, man, Dominic was a gem.
Oh, beyond. We look forward to seeing him. Like if I even knew we were anywhere remotely close to him being on a show, like, I love him because the Italian thing and Bruno and seeing him growing up and the whole deal. Like he was a gem.
He tortured me beyond words. He used to stay at my house all the time. And then he would everything was Carmela. She'd do it. Everything was kid. Hey kid, come here to do this, do that.
He loved you.
Yeah, I loved him too. He
loved you. I mean, there's only so many connections you make. Like what's weird about wrestling after being in it 38 years, if I were to walk away today, it's weird because there's only certain people I could count on one hand people I might keep in contact with because Facebook, you see everybody every day anyway. So there's very few people you're wondering wonder whatever happened to that guy. And that's very few.
One of them better be me.
Remember Terry Daniels?
Yes.
Terry Daniels was a guy we spent time with for a few years. And talk about a guy that I'd have to Google him to see if he's even alive. But just one that never turned up on a convention, never turned up on Facebook, anybody's never even seen him, heard from him, knows of him, his
Aw,
whereabouts, his anything else. You know what I mean?
that's a shame,
But there's
though.
very few guys like that. Very few.
Yeah, that's a
But
shame. Jeannie, I'm talking. I'm taking up all the air here. Do you have anything you want to ask, Tom?
Well, yeah, no, I wanted to know because, well, one, I have Alzheimer's, so I'm not sure if I have known it and just forgot it, or I never actually knew. Who trained you? Like, how did you get into?
so yeah, so that
wrestling?
was Carmela's question I was getting to eventually.
Oh,
So Mike Kalua. So
yeah.
the whole story behind it, and I actually told this story the other day to a guy because Ted Petty's name came up. So in my area, so when I was bouncing, friend of ours, another friend, him and his ex-girlfriend were close. Remember talking about Steve King and his wife?
Yeah.
They were very close to Steve and his wife from out the Ag Hall days, Allentown. So anyway, my friend says to me, he goes, there's a wrestler in the area. So I'm just coming out of high school. We joined we were looking to join our first gym out of high school, like a real gym. So he goes, there's this wrestler. I know he wrestles. I kind of know of him. I heard of him, whatever. He goes, he works out at Olympic Nautilus in Conshohocken. I said, all right. So my one buddy I joined the gym with, I said, let's go. It was a better gym. I said, let's join Olympic Nautilus. In the back of my head, I'm saying, maybe I can meet this guy. Maybe he could teach me about wrestling, or maybe, but see, I'm 18. I'm thinking, yeah, I'll get into it, but maybe I'm like 21, or like, I always just thought I was too young.
Yeah.
So I joined the gym, and sure enough, I find out about this guy. So I heard about him. I said, wait a minute. I said, I met this guy somewhere. So at the Ag Hall, remember they had the Big John Stud Body Slam Challenge?
Yes, I do.
So I always remember like clear as day. So we're there, and there was this real thick-looking guy, like an Asian-looking guy, right? So when me and my dad were leaving, he did the Body Slam Challenge. Obviously, he didn't get him up, and he was sitting there on the bleachers on the way out, and I shook his hand. And I said, yeah, good try. I mean, I didn't know this freaking guy. So sure enough, it was Mike. Years later, and then I end up being that was Mike, because we found out, he told me, and I remember plain as day who it was. So joined the gym. He saw how much I wanted to get into it. And at the time, the only wrestling school, and it was too far, was the Monster Factory. We weren't going to go down there. So we literally, like old school, where this would never obviously happen now, mattresses in the backyard, grass and dirt, and flips and flops, and a lot of just like chain wrestling, whatever you could do in the backyard. Yeah. I'm 18, 19. I would have jumped off a building at that age, because you don't care. You're all full of,
exactly, as Mick Foley did.
Vim and vigor, and didn't matter getting dirty. It felt great being in the backyard covered with dirt, doing sunset flips on a mattress. Nothing better. So one thing led to another. So there was the first show I ever went to with Mike. It was an independent show in Flemington, New Jersey. There was an independent guy. I don't know if you remember the name. It was Tripwire McGuire.
No, that I don't remember.
He wasn't around a lot. Like he was around a little bit, but he wasn't one of the like Larry Winters type big names, DC Drake type names.
Right.
So we're on the show. So I go with Mike, and I'm like, man, these guys are horrible. So I'm in the locker room, and they're sad. I'm looking, I'm like, holy shit, these guys look terrible. And I'm no bullshit, because guys weren't working out. Guys, they looked just like, you remember, like the 80s job guys.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And they all looked terrible.
Yeah.
They all looked, just dopey. And, I don't have to, like a guy like Larry Winters looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger there. So I got to meet Larry. Do you remember John Akers? He was a ring announcer. John Akers was around.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
So John Akers was the announcer. So Mike, what got it started was that night, Mike introduces me to Ted Petty, Rocco Rock, for our listeners. And he introduced me as his protege, which we really hadn't done much yet.
Right.
So Ted says, he goes, you know what? He goes, I run shows, a couple of shows, handful of shows a year. He goes, I'll put you guys against each other on my next show.
Right.
Guess what? I don't think I slept for 3 days. I was so excited.
I
went home the next day. There was one company, it was called K&H Wrestling, that made everybody's gear. It was out in like Ohio or something. I went home the next day. I ordered all my gear, my boots, my trunks, and I still didn't train yet. I still wasn't trained. I bought all this stuff, and I'm like, this guy's gonna use me. I'm not gonna get my first match. So that's what got the spark going. And again, 18, 19 years old, I thought I was years away from actually getting in my first match, and I was probably like just a few months away.
Oh, that's great. You know what I remember about wrestlers in general? I just have to make this point. You guys don't forget anything. You don't forget dates, cities, times, nothing.
Well,
I remember.
Let's say you forget, but you remember. There's a lot you remember.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
There'll be plenty of stuff like something will come up and you're like, oh shit, I remember that now.
Yeah, but
just
Dominic,
like,
God bless him, used to remember everything. I mean, everything. Now, I want to ask you another question. When you finally made it to the WWE, WWF at the time, okay,
right.
What were some of your different characters, and who came up with them, and what was your best one? You were multiple characters throughout your career.
Well, so what happened? I'll take a step before that. So Puerto Rico in 1992, we were there for it was a company that was opposition to Carlos Colon. So I was there with Gangrel, who I saw last night, Luna, rest in peace. Hugh Morris. Remember the Power Twins from New York, the twin brothers, the Power Twins?
Yes.
Dave and Larry?
Yes.
So they were there. They left, and that's when we came in. So I was there about 9 months, and then I felt like I was ready. Finally ready. I never felt like I was ready till that was September, like August of 92. So I sent my stuff to both companies. And back then, I'm just handwritten letter with about 4 current 4x6 color pictures and hope the phone rings. So a few weeks later, my phone rings. It's Terry Magnum TA.
Oh, wow.
And he goes, Tom, he says, and I thought it was a rib because like we had one house phone.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, Tom. And like my buddy that answered, one of the other wrestlers, he goes, the guy says he's Magnum. He goes, it's got to be somebody, one of the boys, or it's got to be ribbing you, right? I'm like, because maybe they knew because I told everybody I sent my stuff in.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, the phone rings. So I answer the phone. I knew automatically it was him. Like I know that, that voice.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
he goes, Tom, Magnum TA, WCW, we got your letter. So now in the letter, I name dropped anybody that I wrestled that was there at the time. Mick Foley, Paul Heyman, Scotty Flamingo, Scotty the Body, all those guys. So whoever was currently employed. And I knew everyone would put a good word in. So he calls me. He says, we have Tom Zink not doing nothing right now. You guys look similar.
Yeah, you do.
A tag team with Tom Zink. He gave me a start date. I gave notice to Puerto Rico, and I went down there and started. It was like September of 92, and they put me in Halloween Havoc the next month in Philadelphia. That was the first pay-per-view, 6-man pay-per-view in Philadelphia. It was October 92. So anyway, that leads to a couple years there. And then year in between, I went to Japan for Giant Baba, 3 tours, and time to get hired by WWE. That was May of 96. So at the time, that was when the Jim Ross and J.J. Dillon, who were with me in WCW, now are in WWF. They hired me to come to WWF.
Right.
So it was May of and they come up with the Salvatore Sincere character. I was hired with Tracy Smothers.
Yeah. Okay.
Alex Porto was the Pug. The Goon was Bill Irwin, and then Tony Anthony was the plumber.
Oh my God! This is bringing back so many memories. My God. Go ahead.
Yeah, we were all hired the same day.
Right.
Because they were starting, they needed more talent because they were starting a set of secondary house shows.
Yeah.
So they went out and grabbed a bunch of veterans because, Cornette was in the office, so a lot of them were Cornette guys.
Yeah.
I was the only guy that was like probably Jim Ross and J.J. Dillon went to bat for me.
Okay.
So that was, I was literally there under it was just under 4 years being paid. So like there was times I probably didn't wrestle for like the last year. They forget you're on payroll. They just forget. They literally forget who's being paid. Like they don't put like 2 and 2 together and say, well, this guy's being paid, but he hasn't been on the booking sheet for 6 months. Like they always
but you're still getting paid all that time.
Yeah. So
That's
like
crazy.
I was still able to do indies and still get my base paycheck from them, figuring it was over, figuring like, you know what, they're not bringing me back after all this. It's like you kind of know when it's like, you know, done when it's over. It's going a different route, but that's fine. You know, it's all positive. That you got.
Yeah, but I love that Salvatore. That Salvatore Sincere was good. I mean, with all the pink stuff and
I loved it.
I mean, so good.
I use it now on the indies as a heel.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I now in retrospect, I just wish I stayed as that instead of being changed over as a baby face without, you know, if you're a baby face, they got to have a plan for you.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have a plan for you, then you just.
If you're a heel, it doesn't matter. You make your own plan.
Oh, I caused so much havoc without their approval because they said they didn't care about us. Like we could do whatever we want. So like I was just doing stuff on my own.
Right.
And it was getting over. And like to this day, people are like, oh, I love that gimmick. I wish they would have did more with it. I wish they would have did more with it. And I would have rather stayed as that than turn as a baby face without much of a plan.
Well, let's turn the page a little bit now. And you worked for us. I spoke about this a couple weeks ago where we put you and Virgil, who's Mike Jones, together as Ebony and Ivory.
Yep.
And you had the black tuxedo, he had the white tuxedo. And I personally think you guys did an awesome job. The people were so receptive, but of course the money wasn't there, you know. But
you wish you could have done it more instead of like one and done, because I got to be real good friends with him early on. Same thing. I mean, you know, the guys you meet on the indies and then they get a break and then you stay in touch. And I mean, last time I saw Mike, rest in peace, it was actually, it's coming up on, God, time flies. It was May 2 years ago at a convention.
Wow.
And he was like a bag of bones. Apparently he just had multiple strokes and everything else. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, he was the most unhealthy person you've ever seen. I'm like, what the freak happened? You know, I hadn't seen him in a while. Then I saw him May of 2 years ago. But yeah, going back to that, I mean, was that the one with it was Brody and Abby was the main event, or that was a different one?
I think you worked for us twice. I think you worked for us both times. You were definitely there at Valley Forge when Brody and Abdullah went. Yeah.
But that wasn't the night that Larry cut his head off. That was a different show. Larry Winters.
Cut his head.
Remember when he had like 42 stitches?
Vaguely, yeah. I don't remember what show it was.
I don't know if that was your show or not.
No.
You know what it was? I remember now. So I think NWA ran that building and definitely used him. It was like the NWA came around the area, or AWA, one of those.
Yeah. And
he had the blade out. And when he was going to cut himself, whoever he was working, I forget, kicked him. And his finger went all the way across his forehead, 42 stitches.
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
that wasn't for us.
No, but I remember, I thought it was the Abby. No, like our match, the Ebony and Ivory. I was pretty sure that was the Brody Abby show.
Yeah, that was because I remember I was telling them, you know, the trouble that we had with Abby chasing me, and it was a long story, but we had some good times though. They were great times. And we were talking about, you know, having people back at the house and, you know, making dinners and doing the things that we talked about. We had
you don't get that anymore. Fun. Like, you don't like what?
No.
A lot of stuff came to mind after we talked yesterday. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys had the first wrestling store. I mean, that's what I always remember Jeannie. I mean, I became real close and friendly with Jeannie. She was working there. Yeah. And that was something where like sometimes you had events there and sometimes we would just go there to hang out and talk wrestling. Cause like back then you're in love with wrestling, you know, 24/7, you can't get enough of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And like we became friends with Jeannie. And speaking of Terry, like I have a lot of pictures still. I remember you did a signing there where Terry Daniels was actually at that market doing a signing with me, a couple other guys.
Well, we did a lot of stuff there. And like we also, I believe, I was telling you yesterday, I believe that we were probably the first, if not one of the first, radio talk shows about professional wrestling. It had to be. It had to be. Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak for other areas because, you know, you wouldn't know because there was no internet or nothing.
Yeah.
But like the Philly, when you guys created that 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, you know, I'm not missing it because that's like we said yesterday. You got information on your own. Dave Meltzer's sheet was prominent. It was the only way to get the behind the scenes dirt. People wanted to hear dirt.
Yep, and they still do.
They do, but it's
yeah.
easy now. Like you could
Yeah.
just flip on one of the web, Facebook, and you'll see crap. You know
Yeah,
what I
but
mean?
but like I told you yesterday, it's not easy is listening to what you're saying, like the people from back then. Like you
Right.
said to me yesterday, there's so many people that are not around anymore, but
Right.
listening to what it was like, now you become a wrestler. If you get accepted like in a WWE or whatever,
Yeah.
you're not struggling anymore. There's
No,
no
and you know
struggle.
what? The guys now, like I said to you, anybody could sign up for a wrestling school. Anybody could be a wrestler. Anybody.
Exactly.
Before, like I like hearing the old stories. Like I have Bob Roop on Facebook, and he shares these stories where like they were stretching guys so they would quit. You don't get that. You kidding me? The guys that have 90% of the guys with the wrestling schools are the softest guy in the room. They're the guys that couldn't get booked. So they love wrestling so much they opened up a wrestling school.
Well, that's like they say, teach. And I'm going to get feedback from this, but they say if you can't do, you teach. But it's true. And like, but like when you were starting out, people like you, Dominic, Bruno, whoever, you guys had to, what they say, make your bones on your own.
Right.
You know what I mean? You had to struggle. You had to $50 here, $20 there, sleeping at people's houses, whatever. And that's where I come in, because when we had our stuff going on, like from my mom, you never met my mom and dad, but from when I was a little kid, wrestlers were at our house constantly. Like I said, we had the first people at our house were Tony Parisi, Tony Pugliese, and Louis Cerdan.
Right.
And they came to our head. Those were the first wrestlers we ever had.
Yep.
And from then on, it was amazing. Like my house was filled with people all the time.
Yep.
And I used to cook, and we used to have lines of people there.
Oh, yeah. You don't get that. You don't get that.
Exactly.
Now, if I'm lucky to see, and Jeannie knows just from going to shows, like I was telling a guy the other day, like I look at a guy like Crowbar, okay? Crowbar, I think he's just turned 50 or whatever. So he wrestled Gangrel, which is, he's in his mid-50s too. And I said to him, I said, the middle generation is gone. So like, obviously have your teens and kids in their 20s now.
Mm-hmm.
The middle generation, like 30s, 40s, don't exist unless they broke it, or they got a break where they're like somewhat of a name and they can, stay around, and that's probably, what they do for a living or get a good amount to be paid. I said, I was just on a show 2 weeks ago in Jersey. 3 guys came to the show that were retired, and they're all like 20 years younger than me. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Guys in their like early 30s. Now they got married, have kids. And that independent wrestling thing was not allowed to, they're not allowed to do it anymore for different reasons, whether their wife just shut it down or their job or whatever else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you said, like now I look around the locker room, and forever, I was always the youngest guy in the locker room, forever. Cause back then they didn't have any schools. So there was very rarely you saw new talent coming in, rarely.
Yeah.
Like me and Shane were the 2 youngest guys on the shows, and everybody else was like, Larry Winters and Kaluuya's generation, Ray Apollo, guys like DC Drake, like those guys, it was their generation.
Yeah.
And we were always the youngest guys. Now, Christ, I said to a guy last night, I said, I've been wrestling for 38 years. He goes, and he was one of the older guys. He was 41.
Yeah.
I said, shit. I said, you're one of the few guys that actually is older than how many years I've been wrestling.
Yeah.
Most of the guys I've been wrestling longer than they've been alive.
That's true. Well, that's like with me, being 66 now, a lot of people have said to me, what are you doing this now at your age for? I said, because I love it. I want to do it. It's in my blood. It's never going to leave my blood.
Right.
And then other people say to me, do it. Do what you want to do. Do what your passion is. It's not taking anything out of your life.
Right. I never understood where you've been for the last 30 years.
Having babies, raising babies, going through it, working 3 jobs. I had to work 3 jobs, and it was tough. So now I have the opportunity, and I got my Jeannie back with me, and I love it. I love doing this. And like I said, we're in competition with nobody. We're just trying to have a good time. I
told you the hardest thing you have is finding people that are still alive.
Yeah. And what, we're going to eventually move forward, like I told you yesterday. But somebody said to me yesterday, why don't you get like Brock Lesnar on him? I was like, what are you kidding me?
No.
Number one, today's guys really have no story.
They don't.
If WWE picks you up, you're in, you're done. You never have to worry again in your life.
I know.
It's people like you and the wrestlers from back then that have the really hardcore struggle.
Oh yeah.
I ate dirt for a week,
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. It was like, we're training in the backyard, and then to get ring time was like, for me, it was like on the job training.
Yeah.
So like once in a blue moon, we could get to a show, 15 minutes before the doors open to try and like, I'd be able to hit the ropes for like the first time or second time. And I look at guys now and I tell them how lucky they are, because you go to a wrestling school, it's all repetition. You're where you are after 2 months, where I was after 2 or 3 years.
Exactly.
And I never really felt like I was half decent until I went to Memphis and I was wrestling 6 days a week.
Well, that's what we're going to do. Hold that thought for a second. We're going to ask you a couple more. And toward the end of the hour, we're going to bring Brian in because he wants to talk about Memphis. I don't want to take that away from him.
No, that's cool.
Do you have anything else, honey, you want to ask?
No, I just remember Tom as such an awesome human being.
Yeah,
he was so great.
Yeah.
And I remember a lot. There was a Carmela, you had the like the personal appearances out there, and I remember him being there and the lines and him, Larry Winters. And I know I have pictures, but I lost them. And I could kick myself for that. But it was just such a good time. And I do remember one thing, Tom. Do you remember the coat you got from a fan?
I still have it.
Handmade, or not handmade, but custom made.
You got a coat?
Well, Katina, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in that closet the other day, and because I had to get the other jacket out for the WrestleCon, the sincere jacket, and it's still right there. Like I just had it yesterday. It's funny because like now that you say it, I almost forgot for a minute. Like where I saw it the other day, I didn't register.
Yeah.
Because it's always been in. I've always had it. It never went anywhere. And now that you mention it, like you mentioned it, and right away I say Katina just like that.
Yeah. It's funny because now Katina's, grown, married, has a child, but it's funny how these things come to pass. Like I had recently told a story, and like you said, 1 or 2 words clicks and it brings back a ton of memories, and about the time, and I'm going to repeat it again, about the time that Dominic was at my house with a couple of the new boys, and he put Nair on their eyebrows and took their hair off, and they had to go wrestle the next day. And he didn't care. It was funny as hell. But these guys were mortified. But those were the good times. I mean, I'm saying we had so much fun back then.
Oh yeah.
And like,
what was funny? I mean, it was fun. The most fun was because being new in the sport, right?
Right.
So we would go to like that Ramada. When the fun was like we never had a connection with the live WWF shows back then, but when the NWA came to town, all of a sudden it was like they were something new. It was cool.
Yeah.
So you knew about the Ramada. I mean, Ric Flair would be talking right on his interview that day when they did like the localized interviews.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I'll be seeing all my girls tonight at the Ramada in Philly and blah, blah, blah. Like Baltimore at Sabatino's and all that.
Oh,
so when you're like me and I'm 19, 20 years old and you're looking up to all these guys because you never envision yourself like being on their level or not yet.
Yeah.
And you're like going to like anything that because you being around your group, you're always working towards the next get together, event, bus trip. Like I didn't go on any bus trips, but like you were doing interactive stuff.
Yeah.
Going to the store to hang out with Jeannie and just hang out. And
I don't know, Jeannie. He keeps picking your name up. What else was going on at that store without
that's what I'm just saying.
Me, nothing.
I know.
You were always like it was light years ahead of anything else.
Yeah.
Light years ahead. So you remember the things because again, you're young and impressionable. So you remember those things in your first few years.
Yeah.
Because you're, again, wrestling 24/7. Wrestling, you can't get enough of it.
Yep,
you can't get enough.
And you know what? With a lot of these wrestlers, and I saw it happening with Dominic. Ivan Putski, he stopped wrestling as soon as Vince Jr. took over. That was when he retired. He didn't care. But a lot of these people, it breaks their heart when they can't wrestle anymore because it's so in your blood. And then you can't do it anymore, and you feel dejected. You feel rejected. You feel like nobody remembers you anymore. Nobody likes you anymore. And what are you going to do with yourself now?
You know what's weird about that, and it's something that comes up in conversation all the time. They almost become trapped in their own identity. Because, like, you know, they stopped wrestling. Can't say that they all had a ton of money to live off of the rest of their life. So, like, Dominic and Pete Sanchez and those guys were able to do that, you know, the paper route, because they needed a job. They had to work.
Yeah, they
Some
did.
guys were so, like, say a guy like King Kong Bundy, again, rest in peace. What the heck is he going to do for a living, you know, besides conventions and appearances? And, you know, again, you're only going to make limited amounts of money doing that stuff.
Yeah.
There's only so many out there to do. But I was always glad to where, like, I could walk out of my house and nobody will ever know me after 38 years of virtual unknown. Compared to the guy that's, again, King Kong Bundy, Bruno Sammartino, to where, like, say Bruno had financial problems, which obviously he did.
Right.
What was Bruno going to do? What
No,
was
exactly.
Bruno going to go work? He's freaking Bruno Sammartino.
Exactly right. What's he going to do? To go to Kmart? You know,
you're trapped being a star in one business that's dried up.
Yeah.
And it's over. And now you're such a huge star in that world, but that world's not paying your bills anymore.
No, not anymore. Well, that's like when Ivan retired, he went on to become a security guard at a high school. And when you hear some of these people are like, wow, like he went from being Ivan Putski to a security guard at a high school.
Well, Tito Santana, who kept his money and did well with his money, always had money. He wasn't going to sit around the house. Spanish teacher. He just retired last year.
Yeah.
And same Honky Tonk Man was a teacher for years. And he just said, you know what? He said for what he was being paid, he was just better off doing a couple wrestling bookings and forget about the school teaching.
Exactly. Well, listen, I'm going to now. I brought Brian back on, so I'm going to let him have the rest of the hour asking you some Memphis questions. And, you know me, I may jump in here and there, but go ahead, Brian.
Hey, Tom, I did one of those bus trips with Carmela. That's how I got to know Carmela through Lawler and did a bus trip when they came down. Part of that whole fandom right there that's crazy. As you said, it was all about wrestling back then. You was in there in 1988, if I'm correct, in Memphis, running that circuit, and you mentioned it just a couple seconds ago. I looked at some of the booking sheets during that time, and you guys had maybe 2 days off that month.
Oh, it was Sundays were the only day off. Sunday was the only day off. And thank God you're young, because like some of the guys were older that obviously lived around there. But like, thank God you have that youth, because you needed it.
Yeah.
And how I got in Memphis was Scotty Raven, whatever you want to call him.
Raven, yeah.
He was working as Scotty Levy. He was using his
Scotty
name.
The Body. Scotty the Body. He came out of Larry Sharp's school, and he showed up like he was a Marine back then. He had the jarhead haircut and everything.
Yeah.
So he showed up on the Indies with Savoldi's and everything else. He came out of Larry's school, real green. But Scotty was, we all hit it off, and Scotty became good friends. So like Scotty's dad, parents made a lot of money. So he just took the credit card and went on the road with it on his dad's credit card. So he walked on in every territory. So he goes to Memphis. He's walked on. Jerry Lawler start using him. And after he was there for a couple months, I sent my package down there. I was in a couple magazines at the time, and like a typed up letter and whatever.
Right.
I didn't have much of a resume yet. Just people that whatever. I couldn't even tell you what was in there besides like pictures in a magazine. So I get the call. Same thing. I remember this like it was last night. Tom, Jerry Lawler, how are you, brother? I'm like, and you know the voice. You know it's Jerry Lawler.
It's him. Yeah.
Jerry Lawler. And he goes, I got your stuff from Scotty, and we're looking to bring you down. And he said whatever the starting date was, and same thing. So I was roommates with Scotty, and then I was there probably about close to a year, and then I was homesick at that point where you're like I was just turning 21. I wanted to be home for my 21st birthday to be with all my friends, and that was enough. I was there probably about 9 months at that point, 10 months, and then it was funny. So Randy Hales was the booker, and I remember being home for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I missed it. So I called Randy Hales. I'm like, yeah, Randy, anything going on? I knew it was over, but it was almost like I wanted to plant the seed in case there was a chance to go back.
Yeah.
Part of me wanted to, and part of me didn't, because now up here I got a ton of bookings. Because like Carmela, you remember, like even back then when you said you wrestled in Memphis, it was almost as good as saying you're in WWF or WCW because
Absolutely.
you're in a territory.
Absolutely.
You're better than now. You're better than all the locals. You're better.
Yeah,
than
because you had a experience that one of the Portland, Memphis, you
World
go up to
class.
Kansas City, St. Louis. If you said that, you were a star. So
yeah, so back then the territories meant something. So right away you come back and you're like, oh, star of CWA, whatever promotion it was, CWA and whatever, just something for the promoter to put on a poster where now you were better than all the other guys on the show.
Yeah.
Because you just came from the territory.
Yeah, because you had a background. Exactly.
Yeah, that was the first step. That was the first territory I was able to get in. But it was great. Like you have nothing but memories. I was talking to Gangrel last night about guys. We were throwing names out. Brookhouse Brown was my first feud there.
That's what I was gonna say. Brookhouse Brown was they did an angle on TV where he just beat the shit out of you. And then y'all was all over the circuit, and I'm going to tell you ahead of time, I might have gave you heat because I was called backstage after your match in Jonesboro by Lawler, and Lawler said, "How was that?" And I was a Meltzer stooge. I was all about the stars back then. I was like, man, that was 4.5 stars. That was awesome. They were all over the building, and I was talking loud, and my hands, and all the workers were walking by because Lawler was in that little room by himself, and they were walking by, and Lawler said, he said that was 4.5 stars out there with Brickhouse and Tom Brandi. There's no way that was 4.5 stars. And I was like, and I remember leaving that night thinking, man, I hope I didn't screw Tom over on that. But it was really crazy because we knew y'all were feuding, but we were not expecting y'all to come out and work all. I mean, you went to the gimmicks table, you went to the stairs, but Brick easy to work with.
Oh, he was great. Brick, that's what my greatest memories of like these territories. The locals, they were so crisp. They were so good. Like Billy, we were talking about Billy Travis last night.
That's another name here. Yeah.
Love him.
And guys, because I started a week before Scott Steiner. Now, remember, like he had his ride set. His brother was a star in WCW. Scott was a brick shit house. You know what I mean? He just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and he went there for some experience. And I can name all the names because
when you saw Scott though, you saw Scott for this first time. Was you like all of us? We were like, oh shit, he's gonna be a huge star. He's gonna be a huge star.
You know what? If his brother already wasn't in WCW, I wouldn't have looked at him as any different than me. Just because, but knowing his brother's already there,
right?
He has that wrestling background, the collegiate. All this stuff that those guys love, like Jim Ross loves the collegiate background and, a shooter and a real wrestler. They love that shit. He just had to come there for experience. But like, if he was just another guy, then who knows what would have happened to him? You know what I mean? Obviously he had the talent, but obviously, him and his brother were a can't miss. Yeah, it was money. That was a money tag team.
You talked about Billy Joe Travis, and he was a local guy, excellent worker. But Brickhouse and those guys, the local guys, were they the ones that helped you like refine the psychology?
Yeah. So you remember Gary Young, right? Remember Gary Young?
Yes.
So Gary Young was another one, just a fine-tuned, again, guy that never hit the big time, but could have, and just at one of those Southern crisp, smooth, called all the spots. Everything was smooth. And yeah, like I can watch matches now and, still be obviously like, working that green out and getting experience. And guys like him that just made me so much better because he was in there cool, calm, collected, smooth, everything. Billy Travis, he was a baby face. I was a baby face. So all we did was team. And Jeff Jarrett was coming up, and, Billy took him under his wing.
Right.
Billy's problem was obviously the demons with drugs. And he was really bad, which was sad.
I think Billy's the only guy to ever, for shoot, get arrested on a live wrestling TV show for child support. It was child support. He actually got
arrested. Are you kidding? That really happened?
Yes.
I believe it. Carmela, he was such a talent.
Paul Diamond. Pat, what do you remember about Pat? They were so good, Pat Tanaka.
So obviously the biggest, probably one of the top 3 nights in Memphis history the night that Lawler beat Kurt Hennig.
Right.
Carmela, were you there for the bus trip?
Yes.
You were there for that, right?
Yes, I was.
Jeannie, were you there?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you remember like it was yesterday. So yeah, Lawler wins the belt and all the baby faces hit the ring and pick Lawler up on our shoulders. So to this day, that video still pops up.
Yeah.
And I see myself on that video to this day. And I tell people, I'm like, we had the best match on the show, and it was no thanks to me, thanks to Dave Meltzer. So it was me and Billy Travis against Tanaka and Diamond.
Yep.
And they just knew Billy. They trusted Billy. They didn't know me, so I only got so much part of the match. And like Meltzer, I can remember reading it like it was yesterday again. Best match on the show. No thanks to Tom Brandi, shit like that. He would write.
Did Billy let you take the heat and you you just
no, actually no. He took the heat. I got the hot tag.
Oh wow, yeah.
But that's only because they trusted Billy. They worked with Billy a million times. Billy, he knew like that was a big spotlight show. All eyes were on that night.
Oh yeah.
So everybody turned up and they turned it up a notch that night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I could have done whatever they asked me, but again, they knew him better. They trusted him more. Believe me, I'm in those matches now where like I'm looking at the guys on the other side of the ring and I'm like, I'm doing all the spots with that guy. I'm not even touching that other guy.
Right. Yeah. You had to that night. Here's what's funny about that night. Joel called me and he told me, be in Memphis. The title's changing hands tonight. You better be there. And I had been told Lawler against Flair one time. I had been told the same thing. Go down to Memphis, be there for that match. And well, as you know, Lawler didn't beat Flair for the belt, but and I said, he ain't gonna win the belt. So I stayed home that night as y'all all watched Lawler win the belt. And I think, do you remember Fargo counted 4 on that? If you go back and watch it, Jackie Fargo was a special referee and he counts 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the mat. So,
oh, did he really?
Yeah,
well, I guess
the first
that
one was probably him just getting on the mat.
Probably was.
He
was aged back then, but you was on a Mid-South Coliseum, and I noticed this show, and I know you guys don't remember everything and who worked the shows and stuff, but you had Dory Funk Jr. working Lawler that night. Do you remember anything about Dory Funk being backstage or anything like that?
Not Dory, but I remember when they started exchanging talent with World Class. So I remember the Freebirds one show with the Von Erichs,
right?
And some of the World Class guys were there, and just anybody that was in the territory when I was there, I remember it like it was yesterday. The Bruise Brothers were there.
That's what I was just saying. Don and Ron, they had just
Ron and Don. But I remember the guys like Terry Adonis. Remember Terry Adonis?
Yes.
I remember again, they weren't all stars, but even Terry was more of a job guy. But boy, he was good. He was good to where, again, you look at a guy, he just looked like some random humbum on the street corner. Never missed a beat. Real
Pat
smooth.
Rose was another name that worked. He worked. Pat was such a good.
So do you remember when they teamed him and Bob Holly? They were
yes, y'all worked him, didn't you? Yeah, you and somebody worked him.
Yeah, so I forget their name, but Bob Holly was a bleach blonde, and Pat Rose, they dyed their hair, and then they brought in. Remember the Cuban Choir Boys?
Yes, I was going to say the Cuban Assassins. Was that was one of those the original? Were those the guys that worked Stampede and everything? I can't even remember.
I'm not sure, but they were good. They were
good.
They
were real good. Yeah,
they were good. But yeah, I mean, you always had Robert Fuller and what do you call it? What was his partner?
Terry Golden,
Jimmy Golden.
Jimmy. Yeah.
Jimmy and Bunkhouse Buck.
Yeah,
right?
Bunkhouse Buck.
Yeah. So him, but yeah, they were there, and just like the different heel groups. When I got there, it was Eddie Gilbert and the Gilberts and Missy Hyatt.
That's what I was going to ask you. What do you remember about Eddie and
not much? I think they left. I don't even remember them for a short period. Yeah, I only remember.
You might have been there were you there when Lawler got ran over?
What angle was that?
When he got run over by the car, when Eddie and Doug ran over.
Yeah. I don't know if I was there. I remember seeing it on TV. I don't know if I was there.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But they were feuding. And Missy was Missy was so annoying. I knew she was what she was when I would listen to her on commentary, and I consider myself smart, but then she would piss me off because she was on my nerves so much. I was like, oh, well, yeah, I know everything about the business, but I'm yelling at the TV screen on Missy Hyatt. So
yeah, I mean, Tommy was still in the ring. So I remember doing Yeah, I remember doing spot shows with Tommy and Doug because Doug was new. He was young. He had to get experience. Doug, and then the choir boys. But yeah, so they turned Max Payne babyface.
Yeah.
So
What
Scotty
happened to
left.
him? What happened to Max Payne?
He's in bad health, I heard. He shows up. He was at a convention not long ago. I haven't seen him since way back when. But he, so Scotty, Scotty the Body left. He went to Portland, and Max Payne turned babyface. So he moved in. He was my roommate. And then remember Sean Baxter?
Yes, I've only seen that name a couple of times.
Yeah, he was like a Poison. That's when Poison was.
Yeah, he was a rock and roll gimmick kind of.
Yeah, so we actually did security for a Poison David Lee Roth concert.
Oh wow!
One time, and that's when Poison was brand new and red hot. So yeah, Sean Baxter was like a Poison looking dude.
How about that?
And that's when I left, Sean was still there, and then Ray Odyssey went down, and they were a tag team.
Yeah, I did photographs for the magazines, and so I took a shoot with Max Payne. He was just super nice guy. We took the photographs. That's when he first came in and was a heel, but
yeah, Max was great. He just played. He had his guitar, so the guitar was a shoot, and all he did was smoke weed all day. Him and Gary Young.
I think that show with you and Brick, I would have to go back and see if I've got the results, but I think the main event that night, if I remember correctly, there was so many people in that little building because it was Lawler against Gilbert, and Gilbert had been doing something the whole night. The crowd was I think it was right over 1,000 people, and the crowd was so hot, and y'all could have done anything, but you and Brick came out. And it was perfect because on television that day, Brick had beat you up. So you came out, House of Fire, and y'all just went all over the building.
They set up an angle. Remember that tag team Rough and Ready?
Yes.
So I pinned the one, then I pinned the other with just real quick roll-ups. And then Brick came out and said, I forget, who was that manager? He was his manager. If you said the name, I'd remember it.
Was Bruno his manager then?
No, it wasn't Bruno. I remember the face. If you said the name, I would know it. So they come out and they make the challenge, and then they were standing up for Rough and Ready. They were, he was like, oh, you can't do that to my guys, blah 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 blah. And then same thing, quick little interaction, and I pinned Brick House.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, and then he jumped me, he threw me into the pole, and then I was supposed to get color. So I've only done it one time prior, and I was shitting my pants, right? So you're on live TV, and I'm saying to myself, all right, where's the blade?
God.
I'm literally shitting my pants, and I'm thinking you don't want to be caught on camera. You want to do it. You want to get color. So it's like one of those things where it's I'm like, you're thinking you're doing it, but you're really nothing. I couldn't have popped a zit, right? So I'm doing it, and they say hold your breath and try to do this
oh my God,
right?
Yeah.
So I got a trickle. I'm thinking I cut my freaking head off, and I get a trickle.
Well, at least you got color, right?
Yeah, they had like a zit. I'd rather pop a zit. I would got more blood. But I'm thinking because remember the Larry Winters thing stayed with me forever to this day.
Yeah, that would.
It stayed with me forever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm doing what I'm thinking. I'm cutting my freaking head off, right? And I got if you went and scratched me like that,
you would get more blood there. Yeah.
So yeah, that didn't. But they got the point. It
was really good. Like I said, it was a really fun time during Memphis. Had a lot of great talent, and they went down. The bus trip went down when Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond were feuding with Billy Joe and Jeff, and they were having these just crazy matches every night. I mean, they were personally trying to have better matches. They're like, oh, we'll have a better one tonight.
Yeah. Well, that was like if you remember in WCW when I was there, it was Pillman in Austin with Steamboat and Shane Douglas, a one hour Broadway every night.
Oh wow!
And it's only those guys could do that. I want
to ask you one last question. I got to ask this because it has a reputation. Memphis Wrestling does. How was the pay?
Well, you kind of knew what you were going to get.
Okay.
So you never set your sights too high or too low. So you kind of knew. So like at the end of the week, again, you're a single guy, and I didn't have any.
And you're rooming with somebody, so
you're
there you
rooming,
go.
you're carpooling, you're eating at Wendy's or whatever. So I'd say probably on average, say like $350 a week, right? So if you had a big Memphis show and they threw you like an extra 50 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so I couldn't actually tell you my high or my low.
Right.
But at least you knew it wasn't like you had to worry about being booked or not booked like the bigger leagues. It was obviously if you're in the territory, you're on the show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, you're wrestling 6 days a week. So so Sunday was your only day off. So obviously Memphis was Monday, Louisville was Tuesday, Evansville was Wednesday, spot show Thursday and Friday. And then we would stay in Memphis Friday night. We were trying to get to Memphis because you had to be there for TV first thing Saturday morning. And then a lot of times they did like Nashville Saturday night back at the fairgrounds.
Yep, that was a hell of a haul. Right after you get through with TV at 12:30, you get in the car, and that's a good what?
And like I said, thank God you're young. Thank God you're young.
Yeah, well, you guys did that a lot though back then.
Well, that was 6 days a week. So like
That's
I said,
what I'm saying. No
thank God
matter
you're
where
young.
you were, yeah.
Where were you living? Were you living in Memphis and taking all?
No, Nashville, the Congress Inn. All the boys stayed at the Congress Inn in Nashville. The day that Kurt Hennig lost the belt, we were hanging out catching because he was in the sports, so we were having a catch with the football out in the yard at the Congress Inn that afternoon before we went to Memphis.
I wonder about that because if you had Jonesboro, Arkansas on a Friday night, it depended upon where you was Thursday night. Was you driving home from the spot show Thursday night and driving all the way back and then going, say, to Jonesboro?
Oh, yeah. Because, we never stayed anywhere besides our hotel back in Nashville. Like I said, we had friends we met in Nashville, Memphis, that they eventually let us stay there. They wanted us to stay on Friday nights, which were like, that's fine. We'll stay.
That's what at my apartment on Saturday nights in Jonesboro, I usually had Dutch Mantel and The Undertaker and the Cuban Assassin stayed a couple of times, but I had a couch. So you could lay on the couch and you didn't have to drive that night, and they'd always take me up on it. So
yeah, so we stayed there Friday nights because again, you had to be up early Saturday for TV, and then you do TV, and then you drive back to Nashville for the show that night.
I had to ask Bruno, downtown Bruno, one time. I had seen him at the mall on a Saturday afternoon, and he told me that after TV, he'd have someone drop him off at the mall. He would stay at the mall and read books and eat food until it was time to go to Nashville. Then someone else would pick him up and take him to Nashville Saturday night.
I believe it. Back then was all about it was almost like when we worked for Savoldi's, because they were the only company up north that would do like 3 and 4 shows in a row, and they would do like TV and a couple spot shows. Like the whole fun of it was like seeing how cheap you could be, and any which way to like cut a corner to save $1 and bring as much money home as you could. And then so like I was already primed up for going to Memphis. I was already in practice by being
by being cheap by working Memphis.
Yeah, I was ready for Memphis.
Larry, and I'm telling you, Larry Winters could squeeze blood out of $1. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
You learn that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the funny part about it was working the indies back then. The guys got paid remember Carmela, remember like Bob Raskin and some of those promoters.
Yeah.
So you were paid X amount of dollars for wherever you were on the show.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with who you were or like your years in the business.
No.
So like me and Mike could wrestle each other, and that match would pay, and it's way, way, way more than they're paid now. Like if they're even paid, like believe me, the money we were paid, I was never paid under $100.
Yeah.
And that was like a bad pay. Like 100 or 75 was like TV money. They called it TV payoff.
Yeah.
Like, hey kid, we're doing TV tonight, so they know they could give you $75. Back then, like the average payoff, and I was in the business 6 months to a year, was $150.
Wow.
These guys haven't seen 150 their whole career now.
There's so many of the indies, especially just in this area. There's 9 little promotions. We have, by the way, Memphis Wrestling is back on television, and
is it?
It's about 166 weeks. I actually work with them providing content. but they
Is
have
that
a local.
Is that the one with that like Star, Maria
Yeah,
Star?
Dustin and Maria Star. Yeah, they've been doing it for 166 weeks.
Okay.
And it draws a really good audience there. They do all kinds of stuff around, but I think they're, and I'm not saying this because I provide content, but they're the most professional. But there's all these guys that haven't, like you said, haven't been trained, training other people, and you have that, and you can't get a big crowd because, say, I have a friend who went to see the shitty show, then he thinks all the wrestling around here is shitty. So,
right, exactly.
And he only goes to WWE. He only goes to,
Yeah. What
That's
about
the bad part.
Ricky Morton has a school in Tennessee somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's on the other side of Tennessee. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
is it?
He's way over on the other side.
Okay, and then you have the Al Snow's guy. He's in Kentucky, right? Louisville.
Yeah, he's in Louisville. Yeah, right where the OVW used to be.
Yeah. He did that little TV.
Well, it's still
style.
called OVW, but what I'm talking about is, where Danny had the school and everything.
Yeah, Danny Davis.
Oh, wow.
They had that
How's he
Netflix
doing?
show. They had like a 7-episode.
Yeah,
Netflix.
that was pretty interesting, but it was a little bit disturbing at times because it resembled a lot of people I know. The wrestlers.
No, but you know what? I can't watch like current wrestling, but I could watch that and like Dark Side of the Ring and all that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that Netflix thing, you could be a bigger star. Like I know like a couple of the people on there now are getting booked and they're doing like shows up
the
here.
The girl's getting booked.
The girl,
time.
yeah, Haley.
Yeah, she's
Hollywood, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's what's funny is you could be on like NWA or one of those every week and only get to a certain level status wise where nobody really wants to book you out. But that Netflix series, if you think about wrestling and Carmela and Jeannie from day one, think about the guys that got over the most were the guys that were able to talk. Okay. Mm-hmm. The Netflix show, you're talking the whole time. So they're seeing your personality from the first show to the 7th show.
Exactly.
They're seeing where you live and who your kids and your wife and your dog
your
and everything.
And
between.
the whole
Al Snow interaction with the company, your mom, everything. So when you look at guys like The Rock and Stone Cold and guys that were like, like Gift of Gab and the guys that they put a mic in front of, they're the guys that always were the biggest stars because you're able to see their personality. That show there, just 7 episodes, and that girl's gotten more probably work from those 7 episodes than any of the girls in like TNA or NWA.
Sure, she got.
Else.
I actually got WWE tryout and everything. She's got something medical they weren't too happy about, but she did get a look, and that's a big thing.
That's a lot.
It is just from that show.
Yeah, just because she had never been, even with Al Snow being part of the business and everything, she never got a look until she was on that show. And somebody,
that's my point.
Yeah,
that's my point. There could have been a guy there because what's cool about it, I didn't realize they had some of the older guys in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was all like young and up and comers and whatnot.
Right.
And then when you see some of these old guys that kind of like live there, it's kind of like a territory where like, when we were in Memphis, you have your guys that live there and like live there all year round, whether they're wrestling for Lawler or not.
Yeah.
And then that Netflix thing is his closest thing to it.
Yeah. Jeannie, you had a question.
Yeah, no, trying to remember. Tommy, you were at the WrestleCon.
Yeah, the one 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, right before WrestleMania weekend. I know you were only there on Friday, which I couldn't go because I have to work. But I think that girl, she was there on Sunday because me and Frank Chili went on Sunday.
I think she was. Yeah.
And I didn't know if she was there on Friday as well.
No, my buddy's been booking her out. He had her over. I think she was at the arena Friday because they had a couple events over there in the block party. And I was just trying to stay on top of all the shit that was going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I haven't met her yet, but my buddy's booked her out like 3 times already.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought that when you were talking about her, I'm like, wait a minute, I think I didn't.
Yeah.
He's
already used
something
it like
there
3
while
times
we were
already for like shows where like she'll do either sign autographs and wrestle or vice versa, either or. But she's already getting booked up here. Nobody would have known anything about her.
Yeah.
you know,
What do
Yeah,
you
she
think-
got booked on Memphis Wrestling. She did a VIP at the front, and then they did a little angle with the local champion. So everything like that you can do when you get exposure. So and you said something. They just put their posters up on Facebook.
Yeah.
I started laughing about that because everyone says, "What can I draw?" And I've never seen a poster. Nowhere. If I get out,
hire
I've never seen a
Carmela.
poster.
Carmela will give you what to do and what not to do. Of course. But here's the funny part. Like, I'm not even joking. What she did then still works now.
It still works. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the social media is gravy. That's something you do when you're just sitting there like on the couch doing nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we
Watching
busted
TV.
our asses. We did.
Right,
We all
right,
did.
yeah.
We busted our asses back
because
then.
you had the radio show was like
Yep.
one thing nobody had.
Yep.
And then, but it was getting the people on the street,
In the store.
Yeah.
in the
store
store,
helps so
and
much,
flyers and posters and
And
flyers
we
and
had
posters.
no other way of communicating.
And it worked.
That was it. It
It
was all
worked.
word of mouth. Yeah, it did.
When you
I want
think
to ask
about,
you a question.
Sure.
What are the odds maybe of us getting her on the show? You're that lady.
I think it would work because my buddy was like, she's new to the business still.
And that's
Like,
why I want her.
Yeah, I think I can get her number from my buddy that books her.
Perfect.
She's at that
Yeah.
age where she probably she loves it, so she'll do anything anybody asks her to do.
Perfect. I want her.
Yeah,
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you talking about Memphis. That was,
you could ask me. You could ask me whatever you want. Like I said, it was all great memories.
fond memory. Just me and you are same age, so you was working there, and I had just come out of high school and living here for college in Jonesboro.
You look good. You look good for 75.
Well, I know it. That's what I was thinking. You too. Good.
I got to tell you, both look good. Let me tell you, Tom, you haven't changed a lick. You really
Oh
haven't.
yeah.
Nope. And you're still sarcastic and everything else.
Not
I
even,
love
I
it.
haven't even been sarcastic yet on today. Nothing.
No, you've been pretty good. I'm proud of you, though. But you're still.
That's 'cause we haven't seen each other for so long. I got to be nice for now.
Well, maybe we're going to get together soon. How about that? I'd love
Sounds
that.
good.
Jeannie
Sounds
and I'll
good.
take a ride down, or you come up and we'll get together. But
Sounds
listen, before we close, I want to say, first of all, thank you so much, because I know that you said yesterday you're not into doing a whole lot of podcasts and stuff like that. And I got to tell you, anybody who's a real wrestling fan who listens to this podcast will freak out, because the content that we've had today, in my opinion, is some of the best that we've had. Okay.
We
Because-
haven't even touched on it yet. We haven't touched
Exactly.
on it.
which goes exactly into my next question.
We'll do a part
Will
two.
you come back? Yeah. Will you come back and do another podcast?
Oh yeah, because we haven't even touched on it yet. We
Exactly.
barely
Exactly.
touched on a
We'd
lot
be
of
here
stuff.
for the whole weekend if we were going to do it. You know what I'm saying?
No, because
Yeah.
30. I've been doing this 38 years. You have a lot of stories.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. That's what everybody wants to hear. Carmela, you got so many stories. And that's exactly what we want to hear. And a lot of people are like, they don't want to see current stuff that much. They want to hear what
Right.
it was like for wrestlers to survive back then.
Yeah,
What
they
it was
want to
like
see.
to get
They want to
started.
hear about guys breaking in and what they dealt
Yeah,
with breaking
real
in and
stories,
different
exactly.
characters.
Right. And we
different
have a
roadblocks.
right.
Well,
and we're
and
gonna ask,
also people my age who watched it on television that really didn't have a lot of access to. I only had access to a few guys, and then so I've got all these questions. Like a backstage TV show. I want to know what was happening backstage when the
Exactly.
TV show was there, and so.
exactly.
Yeah,
so-
no. Like I said, you're lucky to be in Jonesboro to where just the fact that the amount of time that you spent while the territories were still
Oh,
going,
it was
and the
hot.
fact they closed up, but your memories they can never take away from you.
85 was real good. 86, 87, 88, just hot. Memphis was.
Remember the Renegades Rampage?
Yes, that
Yes,
was some big
yes.
old money too.
Yeah,
That
they
was
had
big
that
money.
on the canvas, and I
Nice.
remember like whatever souvenirs, like a couple programs I kept or whatever I kept from Memphis. It was plastered all over Renegades Rampage.
Well, listen, can I call you later? Will you be available?
Yeah, I'll be around.
All right, I'll call you later.
Thank
We'll
you,
set
Tom.
up
I
another
appreciate
date.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do a part 2 and a part 3. No
And a
problem.
part 7 and a part 8, a part 12, whatever you
Like
want.
I said,
man.
we didn't even touch on half the
No.
stuff. Jeannie didn't get a chance to talk at all.
She doesn't.
No.
I told her she could just jump in, but
I'm
she
just
doesn't.
memorized by you, Tommy. You know that. I always,
Yeah, right.
Oh, here we go. We're gonna
That's
do
always
right.
that.
memorized by my Tommy.
And I
Yeah,
can never
right.
keep my mouth shut, so I'm always rolling. So if you're going to talk, you got to jump in. That's what I
Really,
tell
really
her.
quick. Tommy, were you on the show that Dominic did put on in Pittsburgh for a show where I valeted. Were you on that card?
I think so, because I remember.
I think he was.
For Larry Zabisco. I valeted for Larry Zabisco on that card.
I want to say yeah,
but I can't remember who else was on the card because
yeah,
Dominic, he's like, here, you stay here, don't leave.
Who
and
else?
I was just
there
in some
anybody
room
else
the
from-
whole night. And I didn't get to
Anybody
see
else
anything.
from Philly on the show you remember that came out?
From Philly?
Like Carmela, you didn't go to that?
Oh, I was there.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think. I want to see if we can look that one up and see who
I
else
think
was on,
if I remember correctly, his card was from almost top to bottom was his students.
Yeah, like if I had a bet on it,
graduated.
I'd say I wasn't there.
And then
I would remember something, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember it.
And then
Well,
the
we had
main
gone
event
out-
was him against Larry Zabisco, and I valeted for Larry.
Yeah,
Zabisco.
I don't think I would
just
say
couldn't
no because
remember
there
who
was
was
something
on.
there I would remember. Now
Yeah.
there was a Pittsburgh promoter that always booked Dominic and Bruno and me and Mike. Bruno would be the announcer, and he would always put me over. The thing about Bruno, the fact that I met him so late in his career, he was obviously retired, but he always put me over. I think the Italian connection and whatever.
Exactly.
But any chance that like he did like a live shoot interview with Rob Feinstein, and he put me over because we had him in for the weekend for a show, and he couldn't put me over enough times. Every time he was in front of a mic, he would always put me over when he didn't have to.
He was.
didn't
I'll
have
tell you
to.
what. He was always a gentleman, and he was always told the truth. And
Never
even if that truth hurt you, he told it.
couldn't get enough of him. Couldn't get enough of him.
Exactly.
Couldn't
Well,
get
we're going
enough.
to do this again, God willing. Next week, we're going to have Joel on,
Good.
Joel Goodhart. So, God willing, that goes all right. We're going to have him on, and then like I said, we're going to go through you if we can to get a few other people. I want to get Mike Kalua as well.
Yeah, Mike will do it.
Yep. So
Mike will have no
go
problem
from there.
doing it.
It'll be great to see him. I haven't
Yeah,
seen him.
because like
in
I said, Mike broke me in. So everything that he was, I thought he was around a lot longer before he broke me in. It was only about 3 years. But then again, he had stories of stuff that he went through before I got into it.
Yep. Oh, that's what I want. I want stories after stories after stories because there's no kayfabe here. There's none of that stuff.
He even has stuff that you won't remember because it was even before me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Even before me, but
We're all ears.
he'll definitely do it. Mike will do it.
Okay. Well, Tom, I'm going to let you out right now. Okay. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank
Tom.
you guys. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
I'm going to end the recording, and then you two stay on for a second, please.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Mwah, love you.
See you guys.
Okay?
Yep,
See you later.
love you too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, you guys there?
I am.